It's an amazing, amazing thing that we are doing this tonight over the internet. Because if you remember, not so long ago, people considered the internet the ultimate evil, the enemy that's going to destroy life, is going to ruin our children, is going to break up marriages. Well, it did do that. But we now see the positive side. The amount of Torah learning that's going on today online, like we're doing tonight, it's unbelievable. Anybody who knows how to read Hebrew is online teaching a class. Some people who don't know how to read Hebrew are teaching classes. So it just shows how if you look a little deeper, you get past the ugliness and you find the godliness, which leads us directly into the story of Adam and Eve. Because on the surface, the story of Adam and Eve is a terrible story, full of questions. Very quickly, I'll give you the whole list. God creates Adam and Eve, puts them in the Garden of Eden, and he says to them, or to him, of all the fruits of the trees, of all the trees in the garden you may eat, except for the tree of knowledge, good and evil, you may not eat from it, for the day you eat from it, you will die. An hour later, Adam ate from the tree, an hour after being told not to. That was a busy Friday, that Friday. In the 9th hour, they were told not to eat. In the 10th hour on the day, they ate. Now God comes to Adam and says, you ate from the tree I told you not to eat from? He says, it's her fault. She made me do it. God says to Chava, what did you do? Chava says, the snake. God says, because you did this, you're going to suffer pain in childbirth. By the sweat of your brow, you're going to make a living and eat bread, and so on. Okay, here are the questions. Question number 1. Don't eat from this tree. For the day you eat from it, you'll die. Did death mean anything to Adam and Eve? They were 9 hours old. Did they already have a survival instinct? Were they afraid of death? More than that, did they have any idea what death meant? Nothing had ever died. Question number 2. What kind of a mixed message is this? Don't eat from the tree. The day you eat from it, you'll die. Do I or don't I? There's a day I will eat from it. God didn't say if you eat from it. He said the day you eat from it, you'll die. After they eat from it, which is absolutely shocking and surprising, how could Adam do that? If God spoke to you face to face, up close and personal, and told you not to do something, would you not at least wait till after the weekend? An hour later? This is not believable. Particularly since Adam did not have a Yetzer Hara. He didn't have an evil inclination until after he ate from the tree. So all the commentaries that say, see, that's what the Yetzer Hara does to you. Yeah, it would do that to me, but Adam didn't have a Yetzer Hara. And also, how can God be so ineffective? He made no impression that Adam could ignore him an hour later. It's not like Adam could be confused as to who God was talking to. Imagine Adam saying, talking to me? Yeah, you're the only one. So how is that even possible? But then God comes and says, you ate from the tree I told you not to eat from. He blames her. This is not believable. Corruption so quickly, so early, doesn't make sense. Then God says, because you did this, you're going to suffer. That's really not fair. You cannot add more punishment after the fact. There was no warning of suffering. The deal was you eat from it, you die. Now God says, oh, you're not just going to die. Before you die, until you die, you're going to suffer. Not right. And the main question is, why tell the story? What are you telling me? You're telling me that a person who had no Yetzer Hara, no bad friends, didn't grow up in a bad neighborhood, wasn't traumatized during toilet training by his mother, and was given one commandment. He lasted an hour. So I have a Yetzer Hara. I have bad friends. I grew up in a bad neighborhood. I was traumatized during toilet training. And I have 612 commandments. It's like, good luck. You haven't got a chance. It's a terrible story. And to start the Torah with that story? Why? Hide it someplace in the back. Okay, now look at what happens when we look with Hasidic eyes, with positive eyes. Same story, no details left out. Here's what happened. Adam and Eve are two souls in heaven, and they are told that they're going to go down to the lowest world to fix it. They're not thrilled at the idea, but if that's what God wants, that's what happens. So now they open their eyes. They're in the Garden of Eden, and God says, of all the trees you may eat, but the tree of knowledge you may not eat. So now imagine Adam and Eve are sitting there on a log, and they're having this conversation. They're a little bit confused because all the trees are kosher. They don't need fixing. There's one tree that's not kosher that needs to be fixed, and God says, don't eat from it. So they were wondering, what happened to our job? Where is our mission? We're supposed to fix the world. Fix what? Adam particularly was puzzled. Chava said, God is giving us a choice. Eat from the tree and live. Don't eat from the tree and live, or eat from the tree and die. Two options. As far as we're concerned, either one is good. So Adam said, well, then let's not eat from it and be righteous. Chava said, ready for this? Chava said, God wants us to eat from it. Adam said, how do you know that? And Chava said, men never listen. He said, what didn't I listen? What didn't I hear? Chava said, our mission is to fix the lowest world. We're not in the lowest world. When God said, eat from the tree and die, he's telling us there's a lower world, a world of mortality. We're living in a world of immortality. Here we have no job. Our job is waiting for us in the lowest world. So he wants us to eat from the tree and go down to the lowest world, and there we have our mission waiting for us. Adam said, you're pretty smart. Makes a lot of sense. So he ate. So why did he eat from the tree? Not because he was tempted, not because he had an evil inclination, not because he was spiting God or rebelling. He was doing what God wants. In other words, his soul had come down to the Garden of Eden, but not to where it needed to be. So when Adam said, why would God put us here if he wants us there? Chava said, because God always takes us to the threshold, to the border. The final step, he wants us to volunteer. He wants us to choose it willingly. So now God comes and says, you ate from the tree I told you not to eat from. We obviously immediately assume that God is angry. Isn't God always angry? God is marveling. How did you know? He's asking Adam, how did you know that that's the right thing to do? And Adam, being a pure, saintly, untainted soul, said, I didn't know. She knew. Didn't you say it's not good for man to be alone? So now God asks Chava, how did you know? She says, the snake described what the world would be like if we ate from the tree, and it sounded like that's what we needed to be. God says, great. Now, let me tell you what it's like in that world that you volunteered to fix. There's pain. There's the sweat of your brow. It's not like the Garden of Eden, where you have everything prepared for you. It's a rough world. Thank you for volunteering to fix it. So now it's a completely different story. First of all, we can stop blaming Chava for everything bad. She's not the villain, she's the hero. Secondly, it's the perfect story to start the Torah with. You're going to start the Torah by saying, here are the mitzvahs through which you can fix the lowest world and elevate it to the highest level. Well, before I tell you that, I got to tell you how you ended up in the lowest world. Your grandmother, she had the wisdom and the courage to volunteer for this job. So, go for it. Fix the world. She knew it would take 5,780 years, but what's 5,000 years? Before you know it, it's over. One more thing. What Adam and Chava were really discussing is what's going to be with the children. They weren't worried about themselves. In the Garden of Eden, out of the Garden of Eden, it made no difference to them. Live, die, made no difference. But they're going to have children. What's going to be with the children? Here were the options. Don't eat from the tree. Your children will be in the Garden of Eden forever. They will be tzaddikim. They'll be perfect saints. Or eat from the tree, go down to the lowest world. There you'll have your mission, but your children probably will not all be tzaddikim. They're going to have to do tshuva at the end of days. So Adam said, let's not eat from the tree. And our children will all be saints and tzaddikim. What could be better? Chava said, the Baal Tshuva is greater than the tzaddik. I want my children to be Baalei Tshuva. And when she convinced him that a Baal Tshuva is higher than a tzaddik, Adam agreed to eat. Now when God comes to Adam and says, you ate from the tree I told you not to eat from, how did you know? How did you know that a Baal Tshuva is greater than a tzaddik? It's written in the Gemara, but the Gemara hadn't been written yet. And Adam said, she knew. Why did she know? Because when it comes to children, you trust the mother. The issue now was the children. What's best for the children? You always trust the mother. And here's the proof that all of this is correct. The next verse in the Torah, right after describing the lowest world with all of its pains and the sweat of the brow and all the rest of this, Adam names his wife Chava because she is the mother of all life. Isn't that amazing? How did we miss it all these years? She just brought death into the world according to the traditional understanding. She is the mother of all death. He goes and names her life. So obviously, we're missing the main part of the story. What she did is she brought life to the world, not death. What does life mean? The ability to fulfill your purpose for which you exist. She's the mother of all life. Adam was proud of her. He was thrilled that she had guided him in the right direction. And here we are now, fulfilling Grandma Chava's vision. You see how a little Hasidus can change a very negative sounding story into the story of everything. It's what we're all about. So when you start the Torah, you sit down with your child and you say, the first thing you need to know is, Grandma was brilliant. That's the story. So why were they punished? Well, they weren't punished. Why was the snake punished? The snake was not punished. Outside of the Garden of Eden, snakes don't have legs. Just like outside of the Garden of Eden, you can't give birth in an hour. It takes 9 months. There are different conditions for in the garden or outside of the garden. So why is it called Chet Eitz Hadas? Why is it called the sin? Chet doesn't mean sin. Chet means a step down. It was a giant step down. But there was nothing sinful, nothing malicious, nothing unholy. Let's see, one final question. God said, don't eat from the tree. But he really wanted them to eat from the tree. Isn't that a little dishonest? I understand he wanted to give them the option. But he was saying, I don't want you to eat from the tree, when he really did want them to eat from the tree. So even if it was a setup, it can't be a dishonest one. So when God said don't eat, he must have meant it. But then he really wanted them to eat. So what's going on? Both things are true. And this is also very important. God doesn't want us to eat from the tree. And he doesn't want us to die. And he doesn't want the soul to leave heaven and go down to earth. And he doesn't want to create a Yetzer Hara. And he doesn't want to create exile. And he doesn't want to create sin. He doesn't want. But for this relationship of ours to be complete, infinite, and forever, some things are necessary that are not very appealing. So God says, I don't want you to eat from the tree. But I hope you do, because it's got to happen. I don't want to send you away from heaven down to earth. Rather have you close, but it's got to happen. So God himself is doing things that he does not like in order for the purpose of creation to be fulfilled. And so God has the right to ask us to do things we're not comfortable with. But for the sake of the purpose, for the sake of elevating the world to higher than heaven, you got to do some things you don't like. So God has invested a lot, has sacrificed, so to speak, in order for this to happen. The Gemara says, God regrets creating the Yetzer Hara every day. So why doesn't he stop? Well, not until the project is over. So the purpose sometimes is more important than your will. Now it makes sense that sometimes we do mitzvahs and we don't want to do it. Something in us resists, goes against our will, but we do it anyway because in order to gain, in order to rise, in order to achieve something infinite, you got to get past will. Past will is purpose. And then the final question, can everybody do this? God says, don't do the sin, but we can figure out that maybe he really wants us to. No, we can't do that because we have a Yetzer Hara. Only somebody as innocent as Adam and Eve can trust their insight and know what God means and what God wants. We can't do that because we know what we want, and that comes first in our instincts. So we have to trust what God told us, not our own sense, our own impulses, and so on. Anyway, it's a pleasure sharing some Torah thoughts. It's a very good example for how things may appear negative, but they really are positive, very positive. So not only is there a silver lining to what we're going through, it's pure gold. The world is going to be a lot better than the world we are familiar with. So we're not going back to business as usual. We're going up to a much finer, much holier, much more mature world. We're growing up. So pitch in, make the world a little better in tiny little ways, because that's all that's needed now. Tiny little improvements to the world, that we make it perfect so that Mashiach can come and we can start a whole new positive, pure way of living without pain, without death, without sorrow, without regrets. The world as it's meant to be, as Chava envisioned it.